afternoon, everyone. How are we? It's hit 3. Nice to be here. My couch is spoiled. Hopefully a few people joined. It's getting a bit cold where I am. A little bit of snow, so that's all right. Just making the tea. I've got a bourbon. I had a bourbon last Tuesday and I haven't eaten them all, so I'm going through the bourbons. So we're going to talk today about what we're going to talk about today: action and inclusion. That's what we're going to talk about. A little paradox of leadership. See who's going to come on. I've got a question, obviously. I'll ask that repeatedly while a few people join. So my question today, Christmas, you see, so Christmas questions. So my question today is how much, and this took a bit of internet searching actually, but it's about advent calendars, and it's how much was the most expensive advent calendar? That's my question today. How much was the most expensive advent calendar? This came from 2010 actually, so it could have been surpassed. But 2010, how much was the most expensive advent calendar? How much did it cost to buy? So, have a little guess for that. Let's just run the tea bag away. Hopefully more people are going to join, otherwise it's a bit lonely, isn't it? Just like nearly be talking to myself. Nobody's guessing either. Oh, there's a few people on. A few more people to join. That's nice. My question, because you might have missed because you've only just joined, how much was the most expensive advent calendar? How much was the most expensive advent calendar? So somebody have a guess. Good guess, Sam. Strong. If you want, you can guess what was behind the doors as well. That'd be nice. Got my football mug. Football team's playing tonight. First day with the crowd. First game with the crowd. So something to look forward to on a freezing cold December evening. 15,000. Okay. So 3.2 million, 15,000. Anyway, we'll pick that up, but we'll talk about action and inclusion. To start, I hope somebody else is going to have a guess. Don't be shy, other people. You can have a guess. It's just got to type a number in. It's really easy. But anyway, we'll talk about action and inclusion. A little paradox of leadership. I better do it. Otherwise, we'll just talk about advent calendars. I'll just lean on my cooker hood there. That feels quite comfy. So action and inclusion, really, right? So what do I mean by that? In a kind of a way, it's about, do we work with people or do we work alone? That's kind of it. So do we just get on and do stuff, or do we involve other people? And again, that's one of those little paradoxes of leadership, because you'll hear both things. You know, if you're going on any kind of performance course, that's all right, Crofty. Nothing new there. Did you get the question, Matt? The question is, how much was the most expensive advent calendar? And so you can have a little guess there. So that's what we're going to talk about. So if I start with like working with other people, because it's always advocated, you know, learning development, about teamwork, about working collaboratively. And the thing is, that kind of really suits people who are maybe high extroverts, a lot of energy, that kind of thing. They like working with others. And you know what? Some people in that respect can rely on other people as well, because there's a lot of people around them. So sometimes they can kind of hide. Quite noisy, but can sometimes hide, bizarrely. There's often finite skills with people working in teams because they know other people can cover their bases. You know, I look at myself, I kind of count myself as like a team player. But, you know, you don't come to me for certain things. Like nobody goes, oh, we need somebody who's really structure and process driven on our team. Let's get Ian involved. That's not really how I work. And so that's not something that I then develop. You know, in a team, you don't want everybody being like 75% of everybody. So sometimes that inclusivity of everybody can kind of balance out and allow people not to be as well developed, if you like. Alone, of course, the advantage there that people are their own boss, they can drive through. Sometimes people who work on their own are a lot harder on themselves than they will be on other people. But in that inclusivity bit, we kind of see that the people are very supportive, but bizarrely, when people work alone, they set themselves at very exacting standards. So they can block out distractions when people work alone. Generally, perhaps suits that introvert a little bit more as well. You know, the whole thing about when offices went to open plan, you know, some people will try and move and they wouldn't like the noise in the office. But for me, there always tends to be noise floating about. So what happens there? If some people have to work alone, well, they're going to miss the teamwork. They're going to miss the connection. But the people who always work in a group sometimes miss that drive and determination. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh in an advent calendar. That'd be impressive. Does anybody actually know what myrrh is? That's the question. Maybe that should be the question next week. So there's people who work alone. What happens? Why they're good? What kind of things is it? Well, it's about free flow because they can just move their own way forward. They're very self-motivated people generally. People who work alone, self-disciplined. Some would argue actually they've got very good strength of emotional intelligence, which we've spoken about. These are people sometimes who are not seen as fitting always because their ideas are quite random. You know, if I look at something like on teamwork, like Belbin, one of the roles there is the plant, and the plant is that kind of almost that bit mad professor type character. The one that I'd always associate greatly with is Caractacus Potts out of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. So they're kind of lock themselves away, really committed to producing something that perhaps others don't think is right. And I think that's the benefit there of working alone, because there's that real drive to achieve something, to almost spite other people to prove to be successful. That self-determination. You know, and I know Caractacus Potts is a fictional character, but that I can make a car fly kind of thing, that lock themselves away in a shed and make stuff happen. So what those people do is they tend to generate ideas. Now, bringing it together with the group, of course, because the ideas might happen, but then they'll push bits out, and then they can start to group the ideas. So working alone initially, and then bring them back in. So when we're talking about idea generation and putting things into place, we talk about a diverge of ideas and then a converge to pick the best ones. And often we can diverge alone and then converge together. There's a real belief that you know in that brainstorming we need a lot of people. Some would argue brainstorm better on your own, because if you're in a brainstorm and somebody says something, it naturally can draw you down that path. Now, some people sort of spin ideas off and all that kind of stuff, whereas, of course, individually you have to work alone. Other things that alone, one-to-one client relationships, building relationships with clients, rather than have that divergence of skills, that can be really difficult. It's a singular voice. So what about the team? What is the team? Well, the team builds a great deal of trust. Complementary skills, so people don't have to be good at everything. In the team, people are probably more willing to take a risk because they know somebody's going to catch them a little bit. And it can also help with conflict resolution, which of course is one of the things that when you work alone, you don't have to resolve conflict because it's just you. You know, you can be more efficient, more speedy on your own, and you can set yourself challenges and enjoy them. Whereas perhaps when you're working with others, that doesn't happen so much. The team will generate diverse opinion. It's proven that if people are working in a team, it's happier. The people are happier. They'll also develop individually as well as in the team. Longer term, it's probably going to ease a bit of burnout and generate a huge amount of recognition. And again, those extroverts will like that public recognition. So the leader has that tricky balance, and it's going to be task driven. It's always going to be task driven because certainly from the front end, maybe idea generation about where the business is going to go and how it's going to get there, that's probably very much the thing where people working alone is important. So some kind of goal has to be set, and that's better set alone. The cascade then goes to the team and about how it's going to disseminate through a business. Accountability will certainly land with the leader alone. They keep an eye on the big picture. They see where everything is going, but as the people achieve the goals that contribute to the big picture, then there's celebration. Communication spread really both across an alone and an action and an inclusive leader. Because if they come up with ideas, they'd still have to put them aside. So when we're talking about working alone, we're not talking about keeping everything a secret, but we're talking about taking responsibility and being accountable for how it goes forward. When it pushes back out, then the communication has to be constant, regular. As I've said before, in these scenarios that we're working in at the moment, you can't really over communicate. A lot more self-respect, a lot of respect for your own ideas, and you start respecting the process that you're working through. For the team, of course, you start to develop those people. So the leader does have that paradox. Sometimes they have to push things through because it has to happen, but other times they have to then push it back out to the team. There's no right or wrong. If you Google this, if you kind of Google it, teamwork will really get a big push. A leader cannot do things alone. That is a fact. But the leader can do certain things on their own and then get the team to support. That is 100% true as well. So we're not encouraging leaders just to work in complete isolation. What we're saying is sometimes decisions have to be made. Determination to lead from the front and to make things happen is very important. And then people will come with and make that happen. So yes, action and inclusivity, a balance again. Now, we've got a couple more of these before Christmas, and that's what we're going to pick up. So the next one is about resilience and focus. And what we're talking about there is kind of resilience is about the hardiness of change. We're not going to talk about resilience per se. What we're going to say is, as a leader, you need to be resilient and recognize the changing world that you're working in. But also the focus part is you have to deal with the job in hand. So we'll look at those two things, and that's another almost counterintuitive pairing. Now, what about this advent calendar? And I have to say, nobody bought me this one this year, but this was 10 years ago, and there was a advent calendar, and it cost £1.7 million. So Sam Hendy, that's pretty close, although nearly double what it was. And there was apparently diamonds behind every door. So diamond before every door. Heaven only knows what would be behind door 24, but it must have been a big old rock. Anyway, thanks for joining me. I'm going to enjoy, close, not too bad. I'm going to enjoy my bourbon, enjoy my tea, have a great afternoon, and I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday when we can talk about resilience and focus. Thanks very much for being with me.